Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this very exciting panel at NVIDIA's GTC 21. This is the AI for Good. We're advancing AI and data science opportunities in Africa. Just a little bit of background before we introduce our panelists. Over the past few months, NVIDIA has been working with the GPSDD and UNECA to form a strategic partnership to accelerate AI and data science opportunities in Africa. As part of this, NVIDIA will assist them with technology leadership, building capacity, fostering local research and development, and fostering local developer ecosystems. To enable the strategic partnership, NVIDIA is inviting its ecosystem of partners, starting with Future Tech, the lead partner who will support on-ground solutions deployment in the covered countries. This panel will discuss the opportunities ahead in AI and data science in Africa, explore how this collaboration is aiming to build resilience, drive impact, and accelerate economic development in the 10 pilot countries, and how we're aiming to further scale this initiative together. So I'm very excited to introduce our panelists. We're actually going to have each panelist tell a little bit about who they are, where they work, and what they're up to now. So we're going to start with Oliver. He's the Director of Africa Central for Statistics, the UN Economic Commission for Africa. Oliver, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm very delighted to be part of this discussion this afternoon. As already introduced, I'm Oliver Chinganya, the Director at the Africa Center for Statistics. That is at the United Nations Economic Commission of Africa. I'm based in Addis, and also coordinate what we call the ECA Digital Center for Excellence, basically focusing on digitalization. Now, what do we do on in statistics? Basically, we provide support, sustainable support for that matter, in the 54 African countries, in all array of statistics, in economic statistics, demography, social statistics rather, and other areas, including revamping of statistical legislations and so forth. And also we organize a lot of workshops just to help countries. But more importantly, I think we also move what I would call, the methodology or knowledge and solutions from the global to the region, because we're also part of the global statistical system. On the digital center, mainly the focus there is transforming the systems through digitalization or modernization of various systems, both for statistics and elsewhere, including civil registration. That's one of the areas. But globally at ECA, really the focus, we have three main areas. We are a think tank. In other words, we do a lot of research, developing solutions for countries, for them to apply. And also we sort of convene countries to discuss various areas of need within the continent, working with the African Union, the African Development Bank, but also globally with other agencies. And also one of the areas we focus on is the capacity development, which is technical assistance to countries. But we don't do this, on our own. We do realize that we need to do this work with partners, and we recognize and acknowledge several partners that we do work with. This particular discussion that we have today, I think that's one of the partners that's going to be pushing forward a lot of work around digitalization and particularly artificial intelligence. And of course, working with the global partnership on sustainable development to provide solutions and tools to countries for them to be able to respond for the current issue, which is now COVID. So in a nutshell, I think that's what I am, and that's what we do at the Africa Center for Statistics and also globally at ECA. Thank you.
That's terrific. Thank you so much, Oliver. And next, we're going to go over to Bob Venero at Future Tech, CEO of Future Tech. Bob, if you please give us a brief history.
Good morning, Jeff. Thank you. So Bob Venero, CEO and founder of Future Tech Enterprise. Future Tech Enterprise is a global solution provider working with some of the top nations across the globe, as well as some of the top Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 organizations, providing technology and solutions. From our perspective, that we look at things around the globe, right, from a complete ecosystem perspective tied to technology, and how we can help enhance the companies that we work with, the nations that we work with, and the individuals that we work with, in helping drive them and what they're trying to accomplish in their organizations and their countries. And we're really excited to be here today and being a part of this great team and hopefully creating a great ecosystem moving forward, right, to accomplish the goals I think that we all have here. So Jeff, thank you for the opportunity.
Hey, you're so welcome, Bob. And again, I want to thank you for your sponsorship of of this program and also your sponsorship of GTC and hosting these sessions. It's very valuable. So thank you.
We're honored.
So next, we'd like to go over to Dr. Claire Melamed. She's the CEO of Global Partnerships for Sustainable Development Data. Claire, over to you.
Thank you, Jeff, and it's a real pleasure to be here. As you said, my name is Claire Melamed. I'm the CEO of the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data. And we're a partnership that was created to put the best of data and technology at the service of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and really to create the connections between companies that have amazing products, fantastic expertise and knowledge, and the countries and the organizations that really need those products and services to make progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, obviously, which is so critical for all of us and the future of our planet. So we build connections, we broker relationships, we develop partnership that will allow governments, civil society organizations, companies, academics to all contribute in the best way that they possibly can to create the conditions that will mean that we can together make progress on these critical goals. And I'm so thrilled to be here today and so thrilled with this partnership, which is really important, I think, in paving the way and showing how some of the most cutting edge technology really can help to solve some of the oldest and worst problems in the world. I'm really grateful to NVIDIA and Future Tech for the partnership and the efforts that all the teams have made to get us to this point. And yes, can't wait to get stuck in. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. And thank you for joining the panel. And it's so exciting to be able to help support the Sustainable Development Goals and the realization of meeting the objectives of the United Nations. So it's an honor to have you here and to help work with your team. And last is our Kate Callett. She's at NVIDIA. She's head of emerging areas. Kate, over to you.
Hi, Jeff, and thank you for having me on this panel today. So like you said, I'm Kate, and I'm currently the head of emerging areas at NVIDIA. And really, I focus on two things: applied AI in emerging market, expanding our footprint in those parts of the world, such as Africa, Latin America, where developers are coming up with really exciting innovations, which are focused on solving problems which are around them. And then on the other side, looking at everything that's a new up and coming applied AI use case that sometimes we don't even know about yet. So really, on my end, I've been quite fortunate to be able to work with all these companies and the representative and the different bodies that we have on the panel today. And it's really exciting. It's a really exciting challenge to take on and really trying to understand how we can use AI, data, and technology as a whole to help advance the Sustainable Development Goals. Because as technologists, we have kind of a mission to make sure that we enable everybody in the world in the same ways, and we give people equal opportunities and equal tools to be able to solve problems which are pertaining to their environment, right? So really excited about this partnership and can't wait to see where this is going to take us in Africa and even beyond.
Well, thank you so much. And Kay, I'd like to stick with you on our first question, because really, I believe you're the catalyst of bringing this all together when you came on board with NVIDIA. And I'm hoping maybe you could explain a little bit more, how did this program come together? If you could share your history working with the United Nations and emerging markets. And we really want to hear that part of the story to begin this journey.
Sure. It actually started last year. I connected with Claire's team, and I kind of started to understand what the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data was doing. And they were using really data to help build resilience around COVID-19. Because when the pandemic hit, they realized that a lot of countries didn't have the basic infrastructure to manage the data related to the pandemic. And really kind of being informed of the work they've been doing and trying to understand how we could help accelerate that, and having discussions with her team and really diving into what the countries needed is kind of what triggered or set the premises for this program. And as we were kind of like going through these discussions, we realized that actually, AI and data science tools can be applied to even more than just healthcare or COVID-19 resilience or pandemic management. It can help. It can really, if applied correctly at the national level and across the continent, it can really help accelerate economic development. So, what can we do as technologists to help support these goals? So that's kind of what triggered the program. And like you mentioned, I've had experience collaborating with different bodies of the UN in the past, such as UNICEF, UNECA, and really what we realize is that they're doing amazing work on the ground. I've had the chance to do a field trip in Malawi a couple of years ago to figure out how technology can be used to predict the likeliness of floodings in some parts of Malawi, right? So they're doing amazing work on the ground, but they do miss this technology leadership or technology insights that we can bring on our side from the private technology sector. So it's really this combination of having the UN bodies and the partners such as UNECA and GPSDD driving and helping us understand the problems, formulate the problem statements, and us as a global technology ecosystem and partners such as Future Tech understand how and what technology can be applied to enable developers, researchers, and people across the world to solve these problems.
Well, thank you. That's so helpful, and it's really exciting that you sparked this whole initiative. So I'd like to just bring it over to Bob over at Future Tech. Maybe you can explain, why is Future Tech involved in this program? What's so important to Future Tech and your company's ongoing commitment to giving back?
Yeah, Jeff. From our perspective as a company, and I learned this early on. I was actually at Stony Brook University, and I was being interviewed in a large group of master's students, and there was a question that was posed to me, which changed my thinking early on, which was actually very interesting. And the question that came from this individual was, Bob, when did you know that you were successful? And I've never been asked that before, right? Because was it money? Was it this? Was it ranking? What was it? And I sat back and I thought about it a minute, and I said, when I realized that I have the ability to give back, right, and to impact somebody else, was when I realized that we were successful, right, as a company. And ever since then, it's been our mission as an organization to make sure that we have the ability to give back to the community that we support, but also from a global perspective. I mean, we support so many different areas, the Andrea Bocelli Foundation and standing up schools in different countries. There's so many different programs that we support. And when we originally spoke to Kate on this and seeing her passion and her drive for what the potential impact of this was going to be, we were in 100%, right? We really feel that we have an obligation as a successful company to take the things that we have learned to drive some of those cutting edge technologies and bring them to places that don't have access to it, but to ensure that it becomes self-sustaining, right, and self-perpetuating. Because there's a lot of times where organizations will go and they'll look for a donation here or a donation there, right? And then a short period of time later, there's no more money to be given, so that the organization folds or it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Our goal has always been able to create the ability to have something be self-sustaining. And when you look at this program, right, this program is the epitome, right, of what that can be by enabling the nations and the individuals and entrepreneurs and anybody that it touches to be able to continue and grow. So, it's two pieces for us, right? To be able to see that philanthropic approach to help, emerging areas and drive technology, and then also enable them to continue to move forward. And that's a big piece of what we try to do globally.
Thank you. I really appreciate your support on this initiative. Oliver, I'd like to take it over to you, kind of continue the journey. And something that's very interesting is that there's going to be a real economic impact with this program. So, can you please share UNICA's vision on how artificial intelligence and data science can help accelerate economic development in Africa?
Yeah, let me perhaps I start to say that, first of all, I think that today, the use of artificial technologies really could lead to greater productivity. And I think for Africa, we've seen this already in enhancing social good and the creation of several other fields of work. I think that artificial intelligence will profoundly be able to impact several societies on the continent in a very positive way. And this is going to be happening very quickly, given where Africa has come from and the internet penetration that almost, even in the villages now, we do see internet being available. So I think that across the continent, many sectors have been empowered, so to speak, very early on in terms of the technology. And I think that artificial intelligence can become a really good driver for Africa's development, helping to improve the outcomes, for instance, in healthy agriculture, finance, and energy, just as an example. But at ECA, I think one of the things that we believe in is we have a strategic and coordinated leadership, which is critical in maximizing all these opportunities that are available and preparing for really profound change through the use of artificial intelligence in various sectors on the continent. I think it is with this understanding, at least from ECA point of view, that in supporting and the establishment, which we started doing in Congo Brazzaville, that is the research center on artificial intelligence at the University of Congo Brazzaville, which is really named after the president there. I think it will begin to address some of the challenges in implementing artificial intelligence. So we see a great opportunity going forward. But in terms of momentum, I think that in Africa, this could give a momentum for new movement in Africa through the learning and research programs that we're putting in place. And if I was to talk a little bit about statistics, I think for us, transforming Africa through credible data and statistics is going to be key, and it's part of our vision in ensuring that we have data that talks to facts, we have data that's able to transform systems, and to do that, I think using artificial intelligence, big data sources should be able to make us move to a point where we see that now we are able to be part of the digital economy, or part of the digitalization, part of the digital data that is required. And talking about big data itself, I think it cannot happen without artificial intelligence or machine learning, for instance. And I think it is important that these two come together and to be able to provide the necessary support that is required. I can give several examples that, for instance, around Earth observation, in estimating crop yield, for instance. I can talk about the set like images and using mobile data, digitization sensors, and so forth, as some of those things that follow into the Internet of Things to be able to provide necessary support, and also as models to classify and deal with a number of issues that we're facing with on the continent. So the vision of ECA really is to transform, making sure that everyone on the continent is able to be reached. They have access to information that they need as when they need it in a real time. And that requires really developing the necessary infrastructure, both of the internet and countries having to invest a little bit more. But more importantly, again, finding trusted partners who we can work with to be able to move this agenda, particularly supporting the SDGs and also the African Union agenda we have on Agenda 2063. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. And really, really thank you for that overview. We're really honored at NVIDIA to help bring our platform to help the NSOs really realize, what power the data can bring to all the nations in Africa. So Claire, I'd like to bring it over to you. I really wanted to maybe help explain, what does digital transformation across Africa look like in practice? I mean, if you can help the audience understand where we're at now and how we're going to transform it, what's that look like?
Sure, thank you. I mean, I think that one of the strange things about digital transformation is that a lot of the elements of digital transformation are actually not about digital at all. And what they're about is changing cultures, changing institutions, changing relationships to sort of set digital free to do what it can do. And of course, there are some non-negotiables that are required to enable digital transformation to happen. Education, of course, is central. It's so basic. We talk about it so much, sometimes we almost forget how critical it is, but absolutely crucial for this to really succeed and become a kind of widespread part of economic transformation. But of course, you know, any transformation is hugely complex and hugely political, and it requires care and subtlety and deep knowledge. I think what we don't want to do is to rest a sort of shiny new tool precariously on the top of an unstable foundation of old ways of doing things. And what we need to do for digital transformation to really succeed, we need to create cultures of openness, sharing, flexibility, and to create the institutions within which digital transformation can succeed. And I think what we're seeing is this working. What's so exciting about this moment is that we're seeing this happening all over Africa. And, you know, we've been working, for example, in the agriculture sector in Ghana, where there's huge sort of innovation and transformation going on at all levels, from, you know, farmers using digital technologies to access information about prices and cropping and the climate changes and environment and so on, to, you know, at the level of the government planning, using satellite imagery and other new technologies to plan at a national level for agricultural extension and marketing and so on. So I think what we're seeing is digital transformation happening at all levels and really starting to make a difference, as Oliver said, to productivity, economic progress within governments and also among entrepreneurs and the private sector across the continent. But I think what we need to remember is that, you know, we have to, it's serious business, you know, and we have to think seriously about how we're going to create the environment where digital transformation, as Bob said, can really be sustained over time, and what that means about building the foundations right, as well as bringing in the new technologies and so on. And it's about education, it's about institutions, and really it's about the kind of mindset of being excited, as we all are, about the possibilities and kind of wanting to do this and being prepared to, you know, to innovate and be creative to allow it to happen. And there's so much of that happening all, you know, across the continent, that really the task is to join these things together and enable this to kind of enable the explosion to happen.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. You know, I'd like to bring it back over to Oliver. You know, so maybe unpack a little bit more about the NSOs and why we're starting there. You know, Oliver, frankly, you have such an impressive background, you know, from the World Bank, AFD, IMF, and now you're with Unica. Can you tell us about the evolution of the national statistical systems in Africa over the past few years? What has changed, and where do you think we are headed? Why are the national statistical systems and offices so central to sustainable development in Africa?
Thanks. That's quite a loaded question, but I think to put things in perspective, that I don't just start from the recent past. I think let me just link up, you know, to have a sense of how the statistical offices were, you know, many years ago, particularly, you know, just soon after independence for most of them, which is around 50 to 60 years. The national statistical offices, most of them are based on, you know, were built around or developed around what I would call set up around the functions of whoever colonized them. So the statistical legislations basically was a replication of whoever was responsible, whichever country that was had colonized. And therefore, that, you know, over time, when these countries were sort of stabilizing, what we saw, and when they began to develop their own constitutions, their own laws, we could see that they began to change legislations on statistics and so forth. I could give my own country as an example. For instance, the statistical office and the data itself for Zambia resided within what was called Southern Rhodesia, today Zimbabwe. And there was no office in Zambia, for instance, at independence. So there was no statistical office at all. So, yeah, and there was no way of accessing that information, which was in another country, because that, you know, they were, at one point, these were federal states, if you like, Malawi, which was called Nyasaland, Southern Rhodesia, and then you have Northern Rhodesia then in 1964. So you could see there was no infrastructure at all at the time. So, but over time, we've seen a really dramatic change through capacity development that has been made by the governments themselves, but also with the support of development agencies, including the UN agencies, in particular, for instance, the UNDP and UNFPA like really created very, very comprehensive capacity programs. And this, if one follows the history, you actually see that towards the end of the 60s, you see a lot of censuses being conducted on the country. And that was the premise for most of the development that we see on the continent. But fast forward that we have seen from 2000 in particular, we see tremendous development, both in terms of capacity and skills. Really in most of the institutions having to develop, universities having to develop their own schools for statistics and demography. And more what we have seen is that a lot of data is being collected on a various area of statistics and also being able to disseminate as frequently as one would have wanted. And we have also seen, in some countries, they have developed what we would call advanced calendars to show when the data, the surveys are going to be conducted, when the data is going to be made available. And if one looks at 2010 round of censuses, we had the highest number of countries that participated in a census. Over 45 countries conducted the census, which has never happened. Although this time around, I think in 2020 round, I fear that we might not be able to hit that number because of COVID and other constraints. But in developing the statistical process on the continent, really the hinge has been, or the guide has been the use of the UN fundamental principles of official statistics, which is based on several principles, on 10 principles, based on relevancy, standardization, issues of legislation, confidentiality, and so forth. And more recently, we have actually seen countries moving away from the paper-based processes, working with different partners to much more digitized, processes, face-to-face interviews having to phase away slowly. Of course, there's still quite a number of challenges in that area. But again, we've also seen that countries are getting more and more confident, for instance, in managing their own NSDSs. Perhaps 20 years ago, even an NSDS in place, you could see that it was donor-driven, but that's not the case, which is really an improvement. They're now able to encourage and engage with the partners much more openly in terms of what they need, and also choosing who they want to be associated with, which is really good. But again, with the advent of big data and artificial intelligence, new sources, the convention has changed. There's a really big shift towards technology, digital transformation, for instance, the use of data science, innovation, and so forth. So there's quite a lot that has happened, and I think we've made a lot of progress, but there's still quite a lot to be done. Now, in terms of what has changed, I think that was the question, and where do we go from here? I think, first of all, we need to acknowledge that data ecosystem has expanded. There are more actors than one would have, if we were to do a measurement maybe 20 years ago. There are more actors now who are not necessarily statisticians or data technicians, if you like. So it's no longer an issue of maybe the official statisticians be the only ones. No longer they are present anymore. So you have new, what I call data enthusiasts that are coming on, producing data much more frequently and timely, for that matter. And they're not even associated with the National Statistical Office. There are more sources, and then, no one relies anymore on traditional sources. They're using other sources now, or using new technologies and so forth, the big data, and also they're identifying partners with solutions, for instance, to be able to do a number of these things. We have seen how the census in some of the countries like Kenya, they've been able to be undertaken. So there's been change, but I think we are headed for more and better approaches in terms of managing data and disseminating it to the people that need it. And I think there is also the moving towards collaborating with partners that have capacity, tools, and solutions, and much more on smart technologies that to make data available in good time. But I think that really, serious not just for the continent, but perhaps globally, all human beings sooner or later we shall, and we will become our own data collectors. In other words, as you move, data is being collected, it's being disseminated, we become gadgets ourselves because of the new technology and all these things that are happening across as we interact in different interfaces. Now, on the question of why are the National Statistical Office systems so central to sustainable development? I think, first of all, I think we also need to acknowledge that the National Statistical Offices are the official custodian of the statistical legislation, so to speak, which governs the data production and management. And I think that has to be accepted. And traditionally, as I mentioned earlier on, they are really set up as producers of official data and statistics for planning, monitoring, and evaluating different initiatives, mainly for government. But also we know that other users are able to access this data. So they're centrally a government agency. And therefore, their legislation allows them to be able to collect data, which I want to call, because it is used by everyone, by the government. It's a public good. It's at no cost. I mean, very little is paid, if at all, other than the funds that are put in by government. And so it's a public good, and everyone has access, and can use that data in the government and or elsewhere. And because they're public good, it means that the government have to put in resources to undertake huge surveys. No other agency can be able to do that without the support of government to undertake a census, even if partner and donors provide money. To a large extent, governments also have to put in the money in there. So their role is very central, because they have to provide the data that is required to inform government processes and decision-making that has to be made to be able to sustain development in the continent. And so it's key that the national statistical offices are maintained. They're given the right profile and priority within the country, but also it must be recognized that the national statistical offices, they are not the only ones anymore. And I think they have to start thinking of other partners with whom they should work with to be able to provide data that is required. And I think Claire did mention, having the need to collaborate with the private sector, for instance. The academia is critical. The private sector have the solutions. They have the tools. Facebook, for instance, we're thinking that perhaps they could even undertake things like censuses if we work with some of this private sector, run away from the traditional ways. Perhaps the academia could be used also for research, developing new methodologies, and also bridging what I call statistical development and statistical theory, which is produced by academia, which many times does not speak to development statistics. So there are opportunities, and I think the National Statistical Office really has a role to galvanize all these different entities without having to make them so uncomfortable that because we are the one that are in charge, no one else should be. That won't be possible, and they cannot survive. So they have a critical role in producing the data that is required for sustainable development in Africa. I'll leave it there for now.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And that was really great. I know I rattled off quite a few questions in a row, and you hit every single one, Oliver. So thank you so much. And actually, I'd like to take it back to Kate Callett. Just to, I think what Oliver's mentioning with all the census data being collected now, I've been on quite a few calls with you, Kate, with Ghana and many other nations, and we're talking, about what they can do with this digital data. So I think maybe you can kind of explain, where we're starting from in this program. If you could tell us about the work that we're beginning to do in high and low capacity nations in Africa, how we're going to bring the EGX systems into these nations so they can really feel the full power of our platform. So over to you, Kate.
Sure. So there are a few ways we are currently kicking off this program. There are two streams really that we're working towards. The first one is really high level, kind of continental wide with UNECA around the core streams that you mentioned in introduction. So the technical leadership and the infrastructural support. We really are trying to understand the problems these countries are trying to solve and working from the problem all the way to enabling the solution, right? The second one is around capacity building, starting to participate to Art of the Possible webinars that UNECA is deploying across NSOs across the continent, introducing them to new tools, solutions, training. Actually, we hosted a Deep Learning Institute training last week where a couple of national statistical offices, namely Kenya and Ghana, I think, have participated too. We're also looking at research and development. Oliver rightly mentioned pulling in the academia, the research community, but also the developer community. One of the things we often tend to forget is that the African AI and data science developer community is booming, and they are actually the ones driving the innovation there. Trying to identify a couple of projects, such as using AI to extract more insights from digital sensors, for example. And I'll come back to that a little bit later. And the last one is around broader ecosystem engagement. I mean, NVIDIA is an ecosystem company. We have the chance to have partners from different horizons, different expertise, such as future tech, for example. And it's really how can we bring all this expertise and all these solutions together from a global perspective to really try to enable solving local challenges. So that's going to be kind of the first work stream that we've started. But at the same time, we're also engaging at the country level, because what we want to build, and I think that has been coming out a lot throughout this panel, is build sustainable solutions and really build capacity at the local level through the national statistical offices. So we had in mind to start with 10 pilot countries. We've already started to host rounds of discussions with a couple of national statistical offices. And really the amazing work that the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data has been doing is kind of really laying the ground around what are the current capacities of each of these NSOs and each of these countries? How are they using data today? What are the tools that they are using? And really trying to engage with them around defining some of the problem statements and also looking at which ones are ready for what type of solutions and technologies. So based on this, we've kind of identified two categories of countries. And on one side, we have the high capacity national statistical offices, which are kind of already using data, AI, machine learning. They're a little bit more advanced than the others. For these ones, namely Ghana, Kenya, Sierra Leone, Rwanda, Senegal, we're actually looking into how can we help them extract more insights from national census. This year is actually the milestone year for national census, and for the first time in a lot of these countries, these are going to be digitized. And talking to, I think it was Ghana, who was telling us, well, usually when we do national census, we just build a couple of graphs, and that's how we kind of present the insights from the census. But we don't actually push it further and try to understand how we could use data science and machine learning and maybe cross this national census data with climate change, Earth observation, satellite imagery, and really trying to build an accurate picture of what happened in the country over the past 10 years and how the population has changed, has power, connectivity, electricity, influenced the way the Kenyan population has evolved. So these are the kind of insights that they're looking to extract from those national census. And for these countries, we are, like you mentioned, equipping them with our EGX platform. And really that's going to be a kind of a central piece of how they will use data science and machine learning to help advance some of those projects around census, but also around healthcare. We're also exploring ways to build more resilience around healthcare with those systems. And the second part is around low capacity countries. So it's not because countries are not at the forefront of technology or are not already using data science and machine learning tools that we cannot enable them. We actually have to absolutely also look at the other side of the spectrum and understand how we can get them started. So we've hosted rounds of discussions with Guinea, with Central African Republic, and really trying to understand what are the current capacities, what are they doing, and how can we help them slowly but surely transition from the tools they're using today, which sometimes are very basic tools, to the new data science and AI machine learning tools that they can move to and really drive more insights around some of the projects they're doing in these countries. And in these countries, mostly the problems and the solutions that we will be looking to build will be around everything related to Earth observation, climate change, but also power and electricity management. So these are kind of the two streams we have with those countries. And the reason why we're engaging directly with the countries is really to build tailor-made solutions for them, or enable them to build tailor-made solutions and also build sustainable solutions, all under this umbrella to build capacity, local capacity, and give them the tools to enable solutions which will respond to their challenges.
Thank you, Kate. And you covered quite a bit of ground there. And a couple of things that are really exciting is that we are bringing in a full platform, not just hardware and our software, but we're partnering with people to help make sure that the equipment's powered properly. We're bringing in our training capabilities. We're bringing in solution architects to really, hand in hand, bring up the capacity in each one of these pilot nations. Something else you mentioned too, I remember on calls with Ghana, they're very interested in not just looking at census data, but also bringing in data from WHO and other sources, as you mentioned. And I think something that's on top of everyone's mind is COVID-19. So I'd like to take it back to Claire. You've been engaged in brokering a wide range of partnerships around data and COVID-19. But what are the trends that you're seeing? How are you drawing from the GPSDD network to meet the needs of governments who are grappling with the needs of this pandemic?
Thank you. Absolutely. Well, I think we can all see we're still very much in the COVID pandemic. Just the fact that we're having this session on Zoom, which has suddenly become so normal that we don't even meant to talk about it anymore. But I mean, I think one of the consequences of COVID everywhere around the world has been that it put data at the center of policy and of public and political attention. Suddenly everybody became a data geek overnight, and people who previously would have said that they were kind of not interested in numbers were poring over the latest statistics from their country or their region. And what we found, as has already been said, that data obviously was an absolutely critical resource for governments to help them to plan the response, to understand the trajectories of the pandemic, and understand what they needed to do to help to defeat it and whether those policies were working. But what we found, of course, very quickly was that too many governments didn't have the right data or platforms at their fingertips in what was an incredibly fast moving and urgent situation to plan the most effective response. So we were very proud to work with Oliver and his colleagues at UNECA and a huge number of partners to really respond incredibly fast, to put together partnership packages that met the needs of countries in an extraordinarily short time. And I think, what we found was that, of course, in this very complicated and very fast changing situation, no single product or service had all the answers. You wouldn't expect that. The needs were many. There were needs for platforms that could visualize geospatial data in real time, enable governments to see what was happening across their countries. There was the need for modeling to understand demographic trends, understand, what the profile of the population looked like, to calculate risk. And there was the need for all kinds of data relating to health infrastructure and products and services and so on. So, and all the basic needs of connectivity and capacity and things that were there already that assumed a new importance in this new situation. So we found, our network includes 275 plus partners, and they were all, magnificently swung into action. And because of our wide network, it meant that we were able to put together the packages that met different needs in a kind of coordinated and coherent way across countries. And of course, that is what is so exciting about this new partnership too, that it very much takes this package and sort of approach of looking at different kinds of inputs, hardware, capacity, and so on. And I think that, the need for that was very much confirmed by the COVID response. And I think there's sort of two consequences of that. First of all, immediately for the COVID response, often once they had the right data presented in the right way at the right time, this meant that statisticians, the national statistical offices that Oliver was talking about, were able to really get to the heart of the COVID response and sort of take their information directly to where it was needed. So we found, thanks to some of the partnerships that we evolved and their way that statistics offices were able to use those and get them to where they were needed, statisticians were invited into the heart of the action. They were invited into the center of policymaking, which is absolutely where they need to be, not just in COVID, but, many other areas too. And I think, what we hope, now is that this experience will lead to increase a sustained political attention to data, and that, people will understand that they really need the data, and it's worth investing in, and it's worth, you know, paying a bit of attention to your National Statistical Office, listening to what they have to say, and giving them the resources so that they can provide the data that you need, that, you know, that governments need when they need it. So I think this has really pushed data up the political agenda. And it's absolutely, you know, the right moment for a partnership like this to be launched, where there is this demand for data, you know, which is kind of much, much greater than it ever has been. And I think, you know, the second consequence is also that it's really mainstreamed many of the new data sources. Of course, you know, anything new takes a little while to be properly institutionalized and properly accepted. And I think that, you know, the new sources of data, be that from mobile data, data from Earth observations, or new techniques like AI, machine learning, modeling, that allow you to combine different data sources, which is where you get the real magic in terms of new information and insights. And I think those have proved to be so useful and so critical that we're really not having the conversation anymore about whether these things are useful. The only question is, you know, how can we use them to actually solve the challenges? So I think, you know, COVID kind of really, you know, the way that the data community responded to the COVID emergency, I think showed the best of us in many ways, and really sort of long-lasting relationships and partnerships were formed. And I think it also showed everyone else how much they need data, and also, you know, how useful it can be, and some of the excitement of what's possible now that perhaps, you know, some people hadn't previously been aware of. So I think, you know, one doesn't want to, of course, we all wish that it never happened in a pandemic, you know, it's a terrible thing, but I think there are ways in which we need to think about learning from the last year and making sure that we, you know, take some of the lessons to heart as we go into building the systems that will get us through the next crisis in the future. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Claire. I couldn't agree more. I think there's so many lessons to be learned, and more importantly, one of the big lessons is really enabling, democratizing the practice of AI and data science, making sure that we're capturing more and more data and putting that to use from all nations of the world, not just a select few. And now we can see it's, you know, because COVID and climate, they do not respect borders, right? So we're all in this together, and I really thank you for bringing our attention to the COVID impact. You know, we're kind of running towards the end of our time. I think we might have to do this in another session. I would love to invite everyone back for a webcast post GTC. But before we end, I'd like to turn it back over to Bob at Future Tech. You know, and Bob, frankly, I'm just curious what your end game is. You know, meaning, you know, when does Future Tech consider this program to be successful? And more importantly, how can other companies and organizations work with you and contribute to this meaningful program?
It's a great question, Jeff. You know, our end game is it's kind of simple, right? And I'll bring it back to its simplistic perspective, right? Is to ensure that, you know, we as a team, right, can be good stewards to help create a platform, right, that's repeatable, offers best of breed technology, right, as well as best of breed information, right, and the ability to get it out in scale, right, to the different nations, not only from, you know, the government perspective, but all the way down, right, to the population, you know, that's out there, and making sure that we as a team, and I kind of call it the dream team, right, are building that platform to enable the success, right, not only the success of, right, the individuals and or the nations, but also the companies that want to invest, right, in those emerging markets in those areas, right? Because one of the trends that we're kind of seeing along this line is that corporations are expanding exponentially from a global perspective, right? They're not just focused on their home nations, right? From a growth perspective, right? They're going into those emerging areas, and they want to see that investment in the tools and the technology, right, that's out there, so that they can help, you know, drive additional skilled labor and value in those nations, right? And then those nations can take their product and bring them to the corporations that need it. And I think that's, you know, a key for us. And we really want to see that happen. You know, as it relates to getting other companies involved, right? You know, I think we're working on as a team a portal, right, that is going to talk about what this program is, what this project is, and how you can get involved, right, and what you can do. And I think as a team, we have to vet and make sure, right, that we are bringing the best partners to accomplish the end goals, right, and to take over the biggest challenges that are out there, right? And I think that's, you know, another piece of it. You know, we kind of try to put together what are the 3 things that make it successful, right? It empowers emerging nations, right, and taking their skills and offerings and products to the global market, right, which I think is a great thing that we look at. It becomes very key, self-sufficient in a way that allows the nations to continue to profit and invest in those nations and back, right? Because if we can do that, then it can grow exponentially on its own, right? With a little feeding and some love and some care and some, you know, miracle grow, right? We can get it to be to the next level, right? And then candidly, when we expand that ecosystem of partners, right, who can touch different areas and bridge that, you know, will continue the growth of the program, you know, globally, and allow us to expand it to many other nations and many other emerging markets. So, you know, kind of that's the end game that I have in our vision, and hopefully we can, I don't want to say hopefully, we are going to make that successful, right, together as a team and to accomplish this. So next year at GTC, we're going to have a lot of testimonials and a lot of success and a lot of awards going out to people, right, for the success of this program. So that's the end game.
Well, amen. I agree with you completely, and hopefully next year at GTC we can be live together and raise a glass and cheers the success of this program. And you know, Bob, Claire, Oliver, Kate, I want to thank you so much for making time to join us at our GTC conference. Again, we weren't able to get through all the questions today, so I would love to do a part 2 a little bit post GTC on this very important program. And more importantly, anyone watching and listening, if you want to know how you can contribute and help this program, reach out. Everyone's welcome. We're open to anyone's ideas and anyone's contribution. So thank you, everyone, so much for your time today.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you,
Thanks,
Kate.
Jeff.
Claire.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Everybody be safe.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.